Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this year's Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration in Harrow. My name is Steve Levinson, and I will be introducing the various contributors who have come together tonight to mark this solemn occasion. On a cold January day in 1945, the gates of the Auschwitz death camp swung open, and the pitifully few survivors still there were liberated. The passage of time since then means that the number of Holocaust survivors from those dark days is dwindling. So it is up to new generations to ensure that the lessons of history are not forgotten. Indeed, the theme for this year's Holocaust Memorial Day is Bridging Generations. As well as our audience here at the Harrow Arts Centre, we welcome the many more who are watching this evening on a stream from their homes. Harrow is, of course, a home and a refuge to people of many faiths. So I'd like to start the evening by asking Rabbi Kathleen de Martyr Middleton from the Mosaic Reformed Synagogue in Stanmore to lead us as 12 faith groups light memorial candles for the 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis and the countless other victims of genocide, after which there will be a minute's silence. Thank you.
It is an established tradition to light 6 candles on Holocaust Memorial Day in memory of 6 million men, women, and children that perished during this dark time in history. 1 candle for 1 million souls, a number hard to comprehend. Tonight, however, we will light 12 candles. We have invited 12 representatives of Harrow Interfaith to light a candle each on behalf of their faith community. We invited them to do so in memory of those who died during the Holocaust and also those who died in subsequent genocides, and as a pledge that we will work together to ensure that such a destruction, such a Holocaust will never happen again. Candlelighters will now all together recite the following pledge. You're welcome to join in as well. We lit these candles in behalf of all faiths and none, and promise to work towards the future without genocide, racism, and hatred. And I ask you to please stand. We remember the 6 million dead who died when violence ruled the world and evil dwelled on earth. We mourn for all that died with them. They are like candles which shine out from the darkness of those years, and in their light we know what goodness is and evil. We salute those who had the courage to stand up against evil. They are a source of hope when we despair. May such times never come again, and may their sacrifice not be in vain. In our daily fight against tyranny and persecution, their memory gives us strength and leads us all. In silence, we remember. שוכן המרומים, אמצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר כי המסירים את נשמות 6 מיליון אחינו ואחיותינו שמתו על קידוש השם, ינוחו בשלווה ובשלום, שלא ידעו בחייהם. אנא על רחמים, אסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם, אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר Amen. God full of compassion, whose presence is over us, may the souls of our 6 million dead who have gone to their everlasting home with the holy and pure on high, who shine as the lights of heaven, find the safety and rest denied them on earth, beneath the shelter of your presence. Source of mercy, cover them in the shelter of your wings forever, and bind their souls into the gathering of life. It is God who is their heritage. May they be at peace in their place of rest. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Kathleen, and all our candle lighters. Keeping the memorial flame burning here is only possible because of the support of the London Borough of Harrow. Can we now welcome 2 past mayors and current portfolio holders, Councillors Jean Lamiman and Councillor Janet Moat.
You could see Janet, I can't see her.
We're very pleased to be able to do this for our mayor, as she's not well at the moment. And Jack and I, between us, have done a lot of good similar work in our portfolios. So I would like to welcome you to our Holocaust Memorial Day. It's an event which we've been putting on in London Borough of Harrow for, I think, probably 8 years, something like that. And we do it every year, and there's a lot of people around who've done what Janet would mention. But it's organised now by the Harrow Interfaith, so they've got more members, interest. But thank you very much for coming. I'm going to ask Janet to continue.
And a big thank you to all the organising committee for all their hard work in developing, designing and delivering such a thought-provoking programme. Thank you.
Thank you.
The beautiful cello recital you heard earlier was played by archer Sana Howard, and it was Kol Nidre, a prayer that each year marks the start of Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement. Our next contribution is also musical and is performed by one of Harrow's best-loved school choirs, the Norbury School Choir. Its leader, Anne Sadan, unfortunately, due to a bereavement, can't be here tonight, so the choir will instead be led by head teacher Lou Browning. They're here somewhere. And appropriately, the song that they will be singing is No War Will Stop Us Singing. Let's see where they are. Where's the call? here in the end. It was worth it. Thank you very much to Norbury School. Later in our programme, there will be some more music and some reading as well. As you know, the theme this year is bridging generations. How new generations must learn the lessons handed down by past generations. The responsibility of remembrance doesn't end with the survivors. It's the responsibility of all of us, and one that has been taken on by the children and grandchildren of those who suffered and died. Our first guest speaker, Joan Noble, is one of this second generation. She has a story of a secret, locked away diary of a young Jewish girl called Liesel, whose family was caught up in the Nazi tyranny that destroyed millions of lives. Joan.
I apologise if I have a bit of a croaky voice, but I'm here today from G to G, generation to generation, means second generation. I'm telling the story today of a teenage in 1933. I start with an audio recording from my mother Liesel's teenage diary. It's read by a great niece.
Today is my 16th birthday. I hope the weather sets the tone for the rest of my life because it's clear, warm, and sunny, just as I would like my life to be. However, I wouldn't wish to change my life the way it is now. I've been given presents and a wonderful birthday dinner, and everyone was so loving to me. But it's also a day like any other, because every day is pretty much good, although not as special as today, and you can feel that all is well all the time, everywhere. All in all, I'm feeling happy in my skin. I pray that it never should be otherwise, and yet I'm curious what my life will bring me. Although I'm a bit fearful of the big wide world. However, here I have my lovely, cosy home, which reflects my mother's spirit, where I always feel at home.
Well, this is the diary that I'm talking about. It is something we found of my mother's. Unfortunately, she died in 1964. Then I was 15. I was 17. My sister was 15. And this diary was locked, and we actually never did anything about it. We were very young and just getting on with our lives. We did know that our parents had come from Germany. They spoke with an accent. And we didn't ask too many questions, and they didn't say too much. But one thing we knew was we had no grandparents. But as we grew older, we wanted to find out more about our family history and to pass it on to our children and our grandchildren. Now, about 10 years ago, we finally opened the diary and we had it translated. And inside was a powerful insight into the teenager's mind caught up in the early days in the rise of the Nazi Party. So this was the first page of her diary. You can see it's a German script that was really difficult to read. Now, her diary captures a very vibrant, interesting young girl. She's enjoying her life. It's a very ordinary life. She has school friends, she's going to school, loves the cinemas, has started to notice boys, and all this is side by side with history being made. And reading the diary led us to learn so much more about what happened to my family during the Holocaust. Now, the Holocaust definition is exactly this: an attempt by Nazi Germany and its collaborators to murder the Jews of Europe in a continent-wide and state-sponsored program of genocide, resulting in the deaths of approximately 6 million Jews across Europe and North Africa. We know other groups too were also persecuted and murdered during this period. For example, people with disabilities, gay people, Roma and Sinti as well. Now, I am a an artist, and at the time I made my own collage with the little information that I knew about my mother and her parents, and I've found out a lot more since. Now I'd like to introduce the family. This is them in 1937. You see there my mother, then aged 20, her brother was 2 years older, Walter and Liesel, and their parents, my grandparents, Alex and Elfrida Katz. And that was the last photograph of them taken together before their lives were turned upside down. Now they were just an ordinary Jewish family, and they had a very happy, comfortable life, and they lived in a tiny town called Grevenbroich. I met a gentleman here earlier who knew that town. Not many people do. It's in the Rhine area, and it's not far from Cologne. And she went to a Catholic school nearby in Neuss. And the people in Grevenbroich were about 200 Jews who were very well integrated into the community. Now, 200 over just 500,000 Jews living in Germany at that time, which was less than 1%, in fact, 0.7% of the population. Really not many at all. Now, the book on the left is full of information put together by a local historian about the Jews in the town. And it's through him that I have found out so much more. And on the map, he's located where all the different people lived. And my grandparents lived near the station. So now back to Liesel. Here you see very lovely old-fashioned photographs of their childhood, which was very happy. And that was her and her brother. And I do love those photos. Now they lived in an old house. The black and white photo is the original photo. And it still stands today and is an old age day centre. And in the middle, 2 years ago, I went with my sons and my grandsons, and we met the local people I'll talk about later. Now, my grandfather was a cattle dealer, quite a common profession at the time for Jews. And you'll see now in the next slide that here they are in the back of the house with the stables and the horses. But amazingly, on the right-hand side, you see a family tree that goes back to 1650, showing that my family lived there for many generations, at least that's 300 years. And just remember, they were ordinary members of the local community living as normal German Jews. So that is my family tree now. And for example, here, my grandfather, Alex. He's there, a proud German cavalry officer, one of 100,000 Jews, assimilated German Jews, who fought in the First World War for Germany. And it was a high percentage of the Jewish population who took part in that, and 12,000 were killed. Unfortunately, not my grandfather. But of course, we know by the 1930s, the Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, was gaining influence. And the hatred of the Jews was a key feature of the Nazi message. So they blamed the small Jewish population for all of Germany's problems, including the responsibility and the defeat of the First World War. And they brought out that ghastly phrase from the end of the 19th century: the Jews are our misfortune. And in Grevenbroich, there was also support for the Nazis. Now, reading her diary, we see again, side by side, her teenage life being made alongside history. So it's now the 30th of January, just a few weeks later, and she is a 16-year-old girl worrying about the weather and her skating at the same time that Hitler becomes Chancellor with just 2 other Nazis in his cabinet.
Today it was announced on the radio that Hitler is Chancellor. This news shocked a great many of our people. Why has this happened? Well, I've heard it said that nearly all of the leaders of every party have tried to improve things, but without success. So, let's give Hitler a chance. He's very anti-Semitic, but but I really hope he won't take any action in that direction.
Well, you can hear how optimistic she was about the future. And the reality is Nazi propaganda made the Nazis and Hitler seem very acceptable, and no one could have guessed what was going to happen next. So some people did feel, let's give Hitler a chance. But we know again, a month later, after her first diary in the entry, she now records something that she's observing from the window of her house. The footage you will see was actually from Berlin.
I'm upstairs in my room, standing by the window, watching the Nazis march past. Today is Brown Day, and they have all flooded in from everywhere. The street is like a brown wall with red stripes. On command, when the music starts, they begin to move. It all looks very orderly. Walter next door is swearing like a trooper, and he's right, they're disgusting bigots. Yesterday afternoon, I went to the cinema in Neuss. The movie was Mata Hari, and she was played by the divinely beautiful Greta Garbo.
Well, Greta Garbo was stunningly beautiful. And here again, you see the diary reflecting this mixture of crucial historical events and a normal 16-year-old's concerns. And Liesl, well, she says she's in love with someone she calls Carlos.
I am in love, but that's crazy. I can't do anything about it. Today I thought of him, and I cannot banish him from my thoughts. Carlos. Nevertheless, I'm an optimist. I hope I have a guardian angel who will hear me, because generally, I don't have much luck in these matters.
Meanwhile, violence on the streets was increasing, particularly against the communists and the socialists. And here
Yesterday, a Dutch communist set the Reichstag Parliament building on fire. Besides the enormous cost, what a stupid thing to do. Hitler has banned and suppressed a great deal, and now he will enforce this. And by the way, I'm thinking how humiliating this is in the face of the outside world. With the people so torn apart, a lot can happen. The election will take place on March 5th, and I'll be very interested to see what happens. Hitler is pushing out a lot of election propaganda.
Well, in early March, there was a national election, and it was characterized by a lot of violence and intimidation. And the Nazis became the largest party in the Reichstag. And one of the first things they did was put through an enabling act. And that allowed Hitler to make and enforce laws without any other parliamentary oversight. And Germany effectively became a dictatorship. And 2 months later, it was a one-party state. It was the same time that the concentration camps were set up in early March, first of all to imprison political opponents, and later on communists and socialists. Now, attacks got personal, and my mother's house was robbed by local thugs who felt entitled to rob Jewish homes.
At 8:53, the doorbell rings. The door is flung open, and in come 2 lanky men in SA uniforms. They threatened me with their sinister revolvers. I wasn't scared, because I had a completely clear conscience. They were quite impatient and began searching. They found the radio and rummaged through the desk. Unfortunately, only one side was open, but the man scornfully said that the furniture was so beautiful, otherwise he would have already broken in.
This is the desk that, I'm sorry, you go back, please. The desk shows you there. It still exists and is now in the museum in Ravensbrück, which is a rather interesting story of how that came to be there. The description she describes of the robbery continues. She's alone at home, and she must have been terrified, but doesn't really admit to it. She seemed too confident. She goes into detail, what also sounds a bit like a personal assault, and I hope it's not too upsetting. I don't think she realized what serious danger she was in.
Then he told me he had to go and see the upstairs rooms. Well, okay, so I go upstairs with this bandit and I'm not allowed to switch on the lights, but he has a torch. Then I see to my horror that someone has already been up there. All the drawers were open and ransacked. The man checked the cupboards. He stood between the two beds in front of me and asked if I had anything hidden about my person. Laughing, I rolled up my sleeves and he bellows that I shouldn't laugh. I protest that my conscience is clear. He then tears the straps off my pinafore and grabs me by the hip. Disgusting. That was the worst for me. Then he wanted to know if I'm hiding anything in my stockings. To prove my innocence, I rolled down my stockings one by one. After a while, one of the men comes in and says, "We'll be done here in 5 minutes." The other replies, "I'm heartily sick of it here," and leaves with the threat, "Anyone leaving the house for a quarter of an hour will be shot." The other one leaves saying politely, "Please excuse the disturbance. Good evening."
Two very different responses. Now, my mother writes how nervous she was having to go to court. It was quite interesting. At that time, they still could go to court. Later on, that would never have been possible. But like many other Germans, they just felt they should get some kind of recompense for that. So this is what she says.
Getting our things back isn't so important. The main thing is to catch the thieves. If something happens to the Jews, then that's all right. It will become even worse for us. The anti-Semitism has reached epic proportions. Jewish doctors have been sacked from hospitals and lawyers and judges from court. This week, there is a huge military presence for the first session of Parliament. Hitler has become sole ruler over everything, and God willing, he can make things better.
Well, like many Germans, they did think that, but how wrong they were. She calls this the beginning of the end.
The Nazis have painted swastikas everywhere. This is the beginning of the end. They are taking away our very existence, life, food, everything. For us, this is a living nightmare. All my plans are ruined. The way forward is barred. Only a limited number of Jews are allowed to study. There is no getting away from this feeling of vulnerability. We don't know what our fate will be. That is up to the Almighty, in whom now I increasingly put my faith.
So you hear that she's realizing how serious things are becoming. And many people, like their relatives at that time, made arrangements to leave Germany. And you could, if you got visas or someone who would sponsor you in a different place. But my grandparents, I believe, just felt this would all move on, and they didn't know another language, so they sat tight. Now, these restrictions affected my mother, and she got very frustrated. You'll hear it in this clip.
I had a voucher for the last performance of Joan of Arc tonight. I was really looking forward to it, to see Ingrid Bergman in her starring role, and now these Nazis have thrown a spanner in the works. With all the riots, I cannot go out. I almost had a row with Mummy because she's so dreadfully upset. And all this is the fault of those apes, the Nazis. I was just beginning to like them because yesterday morning we were given the day off school to celebrate the good election results. But now I shall be angry forever. If only I could have taken up my seat, second row, centre block, seat number 341.
Now, on the 1st of April 1923, there was a national boycott of Jewish businesses. Just remember, 3 months only after she started writing a diary, things were moving really fast, and she writes,
"This is Jewish persecution. Standing there in front of the Jewish shops are SA men with nasty placards, harassing anyone who wants to go in with, 'Don't buy from the Jews, only buy from Christians. The Jews are our misfortune.' So people don't go in, and that's hugely damaging for the shops. There are 2 guards in front of our house guarding us. Well, we're such dangerous people, aren't we? It's rained all day, and so our guards are sheltered in the little shed in front of the door.
that clip just shows the mob rule that was growing at the time. Now, the situation was that life in small towns particularly was difficult. And the stormtroopers felt very empowered, and local people too felt empowered to carry on taking any action they wished to against their Jew neighbours. My grandfather lost many of his clients. They weren't paying for the cattle anymore, and they even shot one of his horses. Now, my mother's diary shows that things got really quite ugly, and I've called this hate speech. It just shows how small scale abuse really snowballed. And we call this hate speech, and I particularly stress this with children in schools where we talk about the fact that it's what you say can have such big repercussions, particularly with social media today. And this next clip gives you an idea of they knew exactly who to call.
The phone rang and Mummy went to answer it. Then she stood quite still, as if petrified, and put the receiver down. Just imagine how it is when somebody on the other end of the phone shouts, "Die, you Jew!" Well, that was quite toxic, for her and for us.
Now the next clip is about a train journey. My mother's school was a train ride away, and her friends knew that she was vulnerable, so they actually escorted her to the station, but they couldn't prevent her experiencing this on the train.
I'd been sitting on the train for about a minute when I heard someone saying from behind me, "Yes, the Jewish race is nomadic. They go where they can get something, exploit everything, and when there is no more to be got, they move on somewhere else. They are all bad, and they won't be better until their head comes off and they're wearing a Christian head." This is how that man talked, and every word hit me like a whip. It was a large carriage full of people, and they all smiled in agreement. Thank goodness I had forgotten all the other horrible things he was saying. But I had heard enough. I was shaking all over, and I kept on hearing his words, his voice, long after I had gotten off the train.
And the hate carried on in school, you'll hear here.
On Saturday, I found on my desk, "Die Jew," and 3 times Heil and Victory to our Führer Adolf Hitler, with 2 swastikas painted on. I could not show that I was insulted or hurt by the words, because I know that the whole class is against me. Then in comes the teacher. I tell her what has happened, and she was furious. She calls out the guilty parties. Well, she really went to town on telling them off. She said, "It's an outrage to deface the desks like that, and an even greater disgrace to write something like that. You should think about the effect this has on whom you're going to do it to. After all, these are your fellow German classmates, remember that." I could have hugged her.
Well, her teacher at that time was extremely brave and showed humanity, but in fact she was powerless. And so at the same time, Jews were asked to leave school in April 1933, and the nuns asked my mother to leave school. She regretted it all her life, but the one thing she managed to do was to learn some needlecraft skills locally later, which would be a path to a career. Now, in 1935, the Nuremberg laws came out, and the 2 main things were the purity of the German people and their race and Aryan scenario, and to exclude and isolate Jews from mainstream German population. So citizenship was taken away from Jews then and later from others, and Jews were defined by their ancestry. So not whether they were practicing by religion, but if you had one of 4 of your ancestors who was Jewish, anything fewer than 3, you were called Mishling, which was a fairly derogatory mixed race word. And so even, as I said, Christian practicing Jews were still defined as Jews. They might have been practicing Christians. Now, intermarriage was also forbidden, and you weren't allowed to have staff working for you, but later there were many more laws which came into being. Now, that affected the family very much, and in 1937 my grandfather was encouraged to send his son away, because he particularly was getting into trouble with the Nazis in Germany, in Breckenbrock, and they were about to arrest him. So finally, in 1937, together with a group of friends, he would go on a boat to South Africa, then aged 22, and say goodbye, my mother, to her brother Walter at the station. He noticed someone, and I've called him here a mystery man, and we'll find out more about him later. Now, my mother was active in a Jewish youth group and had also made several applications to emigrate to the British-controlled Palestine, now Israel. From 1935, she was trying, but she was always refused because she had been witness to the robbery, and that was not what they wanted out in the real world. And on her application form, she wrote, "There's no life left for me as a Jew in Germany." Like a lot of teenagers and people who write diaries, they stop writing, and she stopped writing for 4 years, and I can only imagine it was a difficult time, and she wasn't writing about that, but you can hear that things really did change.
It's been 4 years since I began writing this diary. At the time, I was full of hope, joy, and excitement. But now we must feel differently at a time when we are ruled by dictatorial forces. We have to find different meaning and content in our lives. We have had to give up what we loved: country, home, family, language, customs, professions. I'm wishing for the strength to forge a new life, not only for myself, but for my good parents as well, and also, I hope, for wartime. Who knows what the next few years will bring me?
That's the last photograph that she has with her father, there aged 20. Now, she was finally given permission to go to Palestine. It cost the family £1,000 English, which I'm told today is about £70,000 in today's money. And it was a huge sum of money for a visa and really exploiting the refugee situation. Now, she left Germany in March 38, then aged 21. And I try to imagine what she was feeling, traveling alone, leaving her parents in Nazi Germany. And she was never to see her parents again. Now, she managed to establish herself. I told you she had skills, and she started a small business designing knitted clothes. And while she was doing her new life all over again, she was desperately trying to get her parents a visa. But the doors of the world were already closing. And in March 38, Germany had taken over Austria. And that's when there were even more Jews seeking to get out. So at the time, 500,000 refugees were on the move across Europe. And many countries, including Britain, were concerned about incoming refugees who would take jobs, and there was a dislike of Jews, and they were refusing, and this is what we also know is happening in our society. Meanwhile, back in Germany, the most drastic night was the 9th and 10th of November. Then was called Kristallnacht, or Night of Broken Glass, but today they've actually named it the November Pogrom. It was a night when, right across the country, synagogues were burnt and destroyed, businesses were attacked and stolen and smashed. People were arrested. Over 30,000 men and boys were arrested that night, including my grandfather, Alex, but fortunately for him, only a short time. And it did want then for people to emigrate. Now, it did make international headlines, widespread shock, but still very few countries opened their doors to the refugees. When the Evian conference took place in France, there was only one country offering refuge, was the Dominican Republic, which is the most interesting to know. For my grandparents, it was a bit too late, but you see from this map that any opportunity of getting out fairly near to Holland, to France, to Belgium. All of these were opportunities, but some people managed to get to Shanghai, South America, and further afield. And you see that the numbers are quite phenomenal as well. Now, in the next slide, you'll see all Jews who were left in Germany were given special documents identifying them as Jews. You see a J stamped in the middle there, and all men were called Israel and women Sarah. And these were the documents that I mentioned from the historian that we now have from the Nazi records. So Jews were then taken from small towns and had to move to larger areas like my grandparents to Cologne. So they were forced to sell their house and their possessions and furniture really for pittance. And that's where we think the desk went. And they moved to Cologne. And they must have hoped still to leave Germany because they had even arranged a shipment to emigrate. But things moved very quickly. And on the 1st of September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. And we know 2 days later, World War II began. And that shut down any legitimate methods of emigration. So my grandparents' story really started to change. And my mother then writes, again in her diary, it's now the Jewish New Year, when families are usually together celebrating. And she writes this like a letter, but she has really no idea where her parents are and nowhere to send the letter. But she's desperate to help and she can't do a thing.
My good parents, today is Rosh Hashanah, and we have no way of wishing each other all the best. We've been cruelly separated, torn from one another. Since I had to leave you, I have constantly longed to be back together with you. I have done anything and everything in my power to remedy the situation, and if I've omitted anything, then this was because of ignorance, not for lack of trying. All the time I've been confident in my hopes, and I just cannot understand why we've had the misfortune to have been separated. And now war has broken out. I only know from hearsay how terrible war is, and now you will have to go through it all again for a second time. I think of you day and night, where you are, how you live, whether you're all right, in good health, what your state of mind is. Do you have a roof over your head and enough to eat? We would have a great deal to talk about, and just now, when we are going through the hardest times, we cannot even speak to each other.
These are the last photos taken of them, again from archives. I call them mugshots, and you can see that it's taken a toll from their previous photographs. Now, Lisa was 22, still not hearing from her parents, and only imagining what was happening in their lives.
I used to find out some information from your weekly letters, but now even these no longer arrive. I know that I couldn't really tell you much in my letters, because I was always so desperately sad to have to console you time and again. And you must also have felt how much I love you, and how much admiration and profound gratitude I feel for everything you have done for me, and how wretched I am. My dear ones, I'm so fearful for you. You are like prisoners, helpless, and in the grip of a hostile power. I'm putting my faith in the hope that you are safe from the horrors of war, and you have the support of good friends who are making sure that you are not in dire straits. I take no pleasure in the freedom I have here. I would rather bear a heavy burden together than know that you, my dearest loved ones, are so far beyond reach. If only you can stay healthy and stout-hearted, I feel sure that we shall see each other again. You must be able to sense how often I think of you, and yet we're all alone, even Walter. When will this end?
Well, the timeline now shows that their attempts to leave Germany legally were futile. So what they did, they actually escaped into Belgium, thinking that they would have connections there. At the time, they were illegal immigrants, foreigners, and so they were picked up. And 2 days later, they were taken into various prisons, quite a few. My grandfather then wrote a begging letter in French, as it happens, and you'll hear just a few words from here.
I, the undersigned, Alexander Katz, am respectfully getting in touch with you, sir, asking you to give us our freedom back. On this day, a ship left Antwerp, which would have taken us on board. A travel agency was dealing with our case, but being imprisoned, there has been no way for us to leave and to discharge your country of people it does not wish to harbour. We are old people, terrorized, robbed, persecuted, imprisoned even for no reason in Germany since November 9th, 1938. The money is on deposit at the Bank of Brussels, awaiting a favourable reply. I remain yours faithfully, Alexander Katz.
So the next timeline again shows you that they were imprisoned in a number of different horrendous prisons during the 4 years. And that's when Germany then occupied Belgium and France. And eventually, in 1942, 6,000 Jews were rounded up as foreign refugees, and that included Alex and Elfriede, sent to Drancy internment camp outside Paris. The story, of course, continues then. On the 2nd of September 1942, a convoy that was transporting over 1,000 people in cattle trucks to the death camp, Auschwitz, in occupied Poland. And that would be their final journey. And the irony was, of course, that my grandfather was a cattle dealer, that they had to go for 2 days in these airless, windowless, cramped and inhumane conditions. And Auschwitz was the largest of the extermination camps, and not the only one. And from these documents, you can see the evidence there that we know from the deportation list of their last journey. And of course, at that age, my grandfather was 60, my grandmother was 49, and they were taken straight to the gas chambers of Birkenau on arrival and not used as slave labor. So we just consider that's 2 lives out of millions that ended in such a brutal way. Now the Nazis and their supporters in the other countries murdered, we know, 6 million Jews, and 2/3 of Jewish Europe's population, not just Germany, but all over Europe, as well as many non-Jews, millions, 5 million. Now we go on to a happy story, the new chapter. My mother created a new life for herself in Palestine. I now reveal the mystery man who travelled with her brother. He became my father. He happened to be posted to North Africa with the South African Army, and they met, they fell in love, and in order to get married, my mother had to join the British Women's Royal Air Force, and so they married in Cairo, and then went on to South Africa. Now, I mentioned earlier that my mother died in 1964, and we came to England in 62 because of the apartheid system. My parents had decided this was what they didn't want to be part of anymore, and it was a difficult time, but I have to say she was a wonderful role model to my sister and myself, and above all, she let us understand we need to cherish life. So I have told her story in this collage, and we now know a little bit about my family. Now, growing up, we had very little, but that diary, and I also have with me just that little pair of shoes and that little dress she must have brought with her on the boat. And of course, the insightful diary, which has given us the opportunity to tell the story. Now, the real legacy also is our family has a gravestone in Grevenbroich, and their names, together with others, have been added onto the bottom. And those who got away to South Africa or South America and other places, we now are in touch with through the internet and social media. Outside their home are the memorial stones, or Stolperstein, and that records their exile, deportation, and murder, and it's something that you can find across Germany. Now, my real honor I have is to meet the young people in Grevenbroich. The children there, together with the teachers and the historian, are doing amazing things to remember the lost Jewish community. There are no Jews left there. They look after the Jewish cemetery, they have Anne Frank Day, they do 9th of November pogrom, and they also visit Auschwitz. And they are keeping alive what I think many people who died in these horrible circumstances possibly thought no one might remember that, their plight. And these young people, I'm going to ask you now to listen in their voice what they feel their motto is.
Although we are not personally responsible for what Hitler and his criminals did, but we want to make sure that this bad time will not be followed, and we draw out the right lessons for the present and the future. No one should be discriminated against, excluded, or certainly not expected to be killed because of their faith, origin, or keywords. This is what we stand for with our project group, Catechovitz Comprehensive School Against Forgetting. In short, it's called KKG Against Forgetting. Since 2011, we have been campaigning against xenophobia, exclusion, and anti-Semitism with various events.
You can see why I'm so proud of them. Now, you've heard Liesel's story, and you've been a witness to it, as we are witnesses to everything we see about the plight of other refugees, racism, injustice, persecution, all of these things, and we all know we must learn the lessons from the past. And the real message that I try to put forward to young people particularly is to learn to live side by side with people who have different religions, different backgrounds, and to stand up when they need to against injustice. And let's all hope to bring peace into our world. So again, the legacy I have is the family that we now have, my sister, her children, my grandchildren, her grandchildren, celebrating one of our Jewish festivals. And in the corner, the latest little one, she was called Liesel as well. And there you see her even wearing her grandmother's dress 105 years later. I quote the last quote, which I didn't mention at the beginning in my mother's diary. She said, "Man proposes, God disposes," and really showing that the best made plans can crumble in the blink of an eye. But we know that we have to plan for a better future. I thank you all for listening.
Well, thank you very much, Joan. That was a wonderful presentation and a wonderful story. It's time now for some more music, so it's my pleasure to introduce now the Mosaic Reformed Synagogue Choir and its leader, Robert Fitz.
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting us. 2 psalm settings from us in the original Hebrew. The first is Psalm 103, verses 15 to 17, starting, "Frail man, his days are like grass." The excerpt we sing sums up the whole psalm, reflecting that every one of us is mortal, but we also enjoy divine protection and kindness. It is a psalm particularly associated with asking for help during exile or serious illness.
Sir.
Now, a setting of Psalm 121, one of the best known. It is the one that starts, I raise my eyes to the mountains, and is uniquely described among the Psalms as a song to the heights rather than of them. It depicts the means where we find the strength to raise ourselves to godly heights. It is widely used as a prayer for protection and particularly uttered in times of crisis.
Thank you, Robert, and the Mosaic Choir. You heard from Joan Noble a few minutes ago about how a young girl was caught up in a genocidal wave of hate. Tragically, this sort of hatred did not end with the Nazis. In the late 1970s in Cambodia, a genocidal regime murdered more than 2 million people. Young people once again saw their lives and families shattered. One of them who survived was Sokpal Din, just 17 at the time, and he is with us here tonight. So we are now going to hear Sokpal and his story about Cambodia. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I am Sokpal Din, a survivor from Cambodia, and it is my story. One day, early morning, on the 17th of April 1975, it was just one day after Cambodian New Year. Just at the age of 17, I was forced out of my home at gunpoint, along with my family and many of Phnom Penh's residents. I was having breakfast with my mother in the dining room, and at the back of the house, suddenly I heard a banging noise at the front door, very, very loudly. I quickly went to see who it was. With my shock and horror and surprise, I saw 2 people with black uniform carrying the long guns, pointing at me. They shouted and ordered us to leave the house immediately, or we will be shot. Don't close or lock the door or windows, let them open. They ordered the front door attacking door, so I could see them through the door, and clearly their guns were pointed. I could see the angry faces and full of hate. I was scared, frightened. I couldn't believe my eyes. Quickly, I responded that I will do as they said, then they move on to the next door. On the road, we managed to ask them why we had to leave our home and how long when we will be back. They answered with big lies that the Americans will bomb the city in the next few hours. We must leave immediately. Anyone who refused will be shot, and we all also told that we will be back home in the next few hours or few days. We all believed them, and we had nowhere to go but follow the orders. Along the way, I saw the mass evacuation of Phnom Penh, seeing families torn apart. Some of the families' members were lost, or have never seen them again. The elderly, the ill, children, and pregnant women stumbling over their bodies as they left the city. Patients with drips, with that touch on the arm and pushchairs. Alongside, many injured from hospital were in the grounds. The whole city changed to a ghost town. The smell of blood, acrid smoke of burning building blended with gunpowder, thick in the air. An abiding memory is the sound of children crying in the street without their parents. Everyone kept moving forward because we had evil, unhumane communist soldiers point the guns at us from behind. Sometimes they will open fire in the air to forcing us to move forward. We had to move like a flock of animals. Suddenly, while I was on the street, I saw a fully pregnant woman sat at the back of a bicycle. Her husband pulled her along among the crowd. She seemed like was going to give birth. She cried in pain. Very fortunate that one of my uncles was a doctor. So he helped her to deliver the baby in the back of our car. We got a four-wheel jeep. I was standing next to the car. I didn't know how long. Then I saw that she came out holding the baby's wrapped in cloth with some blood stain on it. No water or anything to clean or wash. Both parents said thank you and in tears in the eyes, they were disappearing in the crowd. We continued to go along quickly. I didn't have time to think about anything, just to follow the orders. We were stuck at the west side of the bridge. It was hard to push the car among crowded people. At the corner of my eyes, I could see many dead bodies abandoned on the street and pavement. Some of them were in army uniforms or civilian. They must have been killed on the night before. It was horrible. Such disgusting smell. We had to walk past and ignore it. We aimed to get across the east side of the city on the bridge. The bridge called Kamak Canal. That means the head of the road over Mekong River. It was getting dark. We stopped at the west side of the bridge. We couldn't push the car across the bridge. We were exhausted, hungry, thirsty, and had nowhere to lay down to rest. No clean water or shops that we can buy with money. Everywhere were burning, looting, or had been ransacked. Most shops and houses were empty. In that night, the street was still packed full of people. I had my grandmother, two brothers, aged between 6 and 7, plus my 3-year-old sister in the car. Myself, my mother, and my father, we pushed the car. Suddenly, heavy rain pouring down with thunder and lightning that was odd in April to have rain. Like we were blessed from the sky, I lay down under the car over a mat made from cot, which is a plant that you can make mat, trying to rest to sleep. I was so exhausted, soaked and wet. Rainwater flew through under my back. I couldn't be bothered to get up. We all went to sleep with empty stomach. Early morning, we kept moving across the bridge to the east side of the city. We had to move because the commanders were behind and kept firing the gun in the air. It was their message to keep moving. Eventually, we went across the bridge. It took 2 days to cross. That night, we stopped at the east side of the bridge. That area had a small market, but everywhere were empty. Nothing that we could pick that needed, we can need it, but money were no value. It was like a piece of paper. We use it for rolling cigarette or tissue paper. We use anything in the car, like piece of ceiling of the car, hubcap for the tire or wheel, to use as a pot or wok to cook. I was sitting at the corner of the street, on top of the pile of my books. I realized those books had no value and could be dangerous to me. I was crying in tears, missing my home, school, and friends. When will we be returned home? 2 or 3 days now. Where is the American come to drop the bombs? It was their lies and get us out of our home. Then we reached a Buddhist temple in Gyeongsai province. We took shelter in the temple with many of Phnom civilians. Later on, the communists used this temple for hospital and kept prisoners. There weren't any monks or priests around except civilians at the place. I saw some movie stars, singers, doctors, bankers, teachers, students, etc. We all hid our identities and pretend that we just low-class citizens. It was very lucky that they couldn't read. They just uneducated. They knew that we were lying because of our appearances. The color of our skin. We hid any personal valuable like gold, jewelry, diamond, watches. Those items were useful later on to exchange for food, rice, salt, or sugar, or medicine among the people ourselves. My father was taken away along with my older male relatives. My uncle, he has 3 sons, or we never see them again. We were then forced to live in the countryside for 3 months before being sent to the jungle and left to die. During that time, we were forced to work hard in labor by local Khmer Rouge groups. At the time, my mother had a younger sister who was 3 years old, and 2 young brothers, 5 and 6. So myself, my mother, and brothers were all forced to work in the rice paddy fields and potato farm, digging soil and build dike right on the water wheels to carry water inside rice field. They will always found something for us to do. This involved many long hours in terrible conditions, in rain or hot sun, no break time or time off. If you were ill or unable to work, the small bowl cooked rice allowed would be cut. I never knew that day of time during that period. At sunrise, people had to get up to work to exchange a bowl of rice. No one dared to stand up against them. To put in context, sometimes we were given 1 tablespoon of rice grain each day to live on. We were starved, suffered with various sickness, including malaria, diarrhea, and other tropical diseases. Very painful, slow death. My younger brother died of malaria and diarrhea. All of us started losing weight and fell ill. We lost hair, some kind of weight on looking like skeleton. There wasn't any real medicine. We were given some kind of handmade round shape like rabbit drops. No proper hospital or any real doctors. We had to find any alternative herbal plants to treat ourselves. Subsequently, my 70 years old grandmother, and my 5 years old brother died in the jungle. Both were too ill from malnutrition, malaria, and starved to death. In addition to that, all members of my 5 uncles' family were dead one by one. By this point, I had no more tears to shed. After witnessing so many deaths, I felt that they were so lucky to go, and I'm here to endure the pain in this living hell. My 6 years old brother was tortured and punished. Someone was very thin. His name was very thin. He looked like a skeleton with thinning hair. His ribs caged and veins shot up under his pale yellow skin. He was forcibly tied up and put on the red ants hill. His only crime was to pick pumpkin flowers from the field for food. He was starving. Outside of our family, any educated person, anyone who wore spectacles, teachers, students, doctors, bankers, civil servant, entertainer, soldier, and the rest were executed or faced life in prison. If they lucky, dying slow death. We all shared shelter, a makeshift bamboo hut in the jungle. One by one, many of my cousins, older relatives died along with many of our neighbors in the jungle. I was in prison without war, a living hell. We all wished to be dead rather than alive, and I witnessed firsthand many troubling things. Phnom Penh, the city, stripped off all home content and taken huge convoy over the border. Being subject to the lies and deceit of the Khmer Rouge, many that lead to so many deaths. many of Pol Pot Khmer's army was made up a young boy and girl from age 11 years old upward, and they all carried the long gun AK-47. Evacuee forced into selection of camps, section, question, and it found again the Pol Pot idea they will be destroyed, man is executed. Widespread starvation, disease, illness, and death. People resorted to exchange gold, diamond, watches, anything to receive value for scrap food. No religion, no faith, or any respect to your parents. Our parents were our comrade. Male and female were forced to marry with the other without consent. Either they liked each other or not there to refuse. They called it freshly married, which could hold up to 30 couples at a time. The wedding dress was a black uniform and a scarf around their neck. But often Khmer used the phrase, to destroy you is no loss, to kill you is no profit. Torture was an everyday experience during the Pol Pot regime of terror. Once I had been tortured and punished because I couldn't complete the task carrying sword to build a dike. There were built many of them for water irrigation. I was kicked and beaten. I had to carry on working without food until it finished. Indeed, that was when we lived on a daily basis during that time. I was very lucky to escape death many times. And then Vietnamese came in to liberate us. I was caught by the Vietnamese and accused that I'm one of the Pol Pot soldiers. So they tied me up and kept me as a prisoner put the prisoner in the brick oven. My wrists were tied up with 11 male prisoners in one line. I felt like animals. Being tortured, they sent me to prison in Siem Reap. They tied me my wrist, possibly on the back, and put the line on top near the ceiling, and then they pulled and asked me question. But your parents do everything. So they kicked the lock from my foot, and I was so painful. I just stood in the air, telling me I kept screaming, please don't put me down on television. It wasn't torture, I enjoyed that way. I thought I'm going to die. And again, every day now, I still have the mark, the scarf on my boss wrist. Because when they put the bag and take it off, you just stood in the air, then your shoulder like, oh, in pain. And this like burning, like fire burning on your wrist. Now, and then they put me to prison in Siem Reap. That's a popular destination in Cambodia. And they were forced to work in that prison, Vietnamese prison, to go find food, everything. Unfortunately, in that forest, there's a lot of minefield left from the Pol Pot Khmer Rouge. Some prisoners went up there and blew the mine and lost their life, lost their leg and arm for nothing. So luckily, I wasn't. They didn't send me to the looking for food, so I would just work in the farm, vegetable farm, which is to carry all the things, a human like whatever to look after the vegetable for them. So in the prison, I can see the room with full shack of metal bar. Because at night they put prisoner on the bed, metal cement mat, and they put their feet in the shackle, so they stuck in one, so they can't get out. If you want to go to toilet or something at night, you can't get out. So that is what they do. They don't want you to escape. I share a place to sleep with more than 200 prisoners. I saw many things happen there, and at that time you just feel, why they do that? What I have done wrong? Why are you torturing me? Send me out of my home. What is due to you? It's only a few people who do this, and no one dare to stand up or do anything against them. We had no help from the outside world. I lived in that they call year zero. We share our life in the forest with wild animals and use the daily cycle of the sun, moon, and stars as our only time frame. Any nation can suffer of greed, hate, and selfishness of others. People need to know and learn from the past by bearing witness to such events. Although I'm still alive, with scars, mentally and nightmares, I aim to continue living without regrets, anger, and disappointment. Even though it's hard, but like many of the fellow Cambodians, I lost my dreams, my education, my aspiration, and many members of my family. Over 1 year, estimate 2 million innocent Cambodians lost their life due to the brutal genocide regime of the Khmer Rouge. I am trying to be strong, talking and revealing my life story to the world. I believe the reason I am alive today because of my belief, and I didn't give up my hope. I always hoped to return to school, my home, and meet my father again. My father been taken out with my uncle at the beginning, and they promised us 3 months they're coming back. But since then, since 1975 until the end, we never seen them again. We don't know where they killed, where they executed, somewhere else. And then I dream every night for food. We all did it. Young, and then I didn't want to see my mother and remaining family to suffer hardship. I had to sacrifice my life to support my mother after we were liberated by the Vietnamese troops in 7th January 1979 and beyond. We later escaped to refugee camp near the Thai border, but it wasn't until the 4th of August 1987 we were lucky enough to be allowed to come to England by the Red Cross. An abiding memory is in that I was able to care for my mother until she passed away in UK in 2001. The experience I had during the genocide made me stronger mentally and appreciate life more than ever. I have successfully published a book called The Killing Field, that one, The Killing Field of Cambodia. The book is a complete story, a record of the atrocity for generations to learn in the future. I carry these scars deep down my memories for life and scars over my both wrists from the torture by the Vietnamese. The atrocity created by a group of the evil people had destroyed life, and I never forget that day. Thank you for giving me opportunity to speak here before you today and the ability to keep this memory alive. I appreciate your listening to this Cambodian account from that terrible period of our recent history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sokval. The killing fields indeed. Our next contribution is from our next door neighbour here in Hatch End. A poetry reading by Rabbi Naomi Goldman of Cole High Synagogue. The poem, Bridging the Generations, is by Linda Seymour.
What can I tell you? How can I begin? I grow old. Evil memories cling to me. Time failed to heal. I tried to forget, but I could not. You must always remember the truth. Never, ever forget. How they came for us, our entire family, everyone we knew, all perished. We ran from our home, desperate to find safety. Nowhere was safe. Streets filled with fear, the smell of it. I could never return home. Home was gone, lost, everything. How I didn't lose my mind, I'll never know. But I know I must share my story with all of you, knowing this truth. how it haunts me, remains real. My heart aches for you, our young generation, our hope, our future. I see the path ahead, the bridge we try to cross, for acceptance from others, to remain safe. Even today, this pain of persecution continues. But we must go on. We must find hope. There has to be faith. What else is there?
As you're probably aware, Harrow Interfaith has once again been heavily involved in putting tonight's event together. Its chairman, Gopal Bachu, this year took part in the March of the Living, which culminates at the Auschwitz death camp. Gopal now joins us to talk about the visit to Auschwitz.
Holocaust Memorial Day emphasizes the importance of remembrance, education, and action against hatred and prejudice with a core message of never again. We commemorate the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust and millions of other victims of Nazi persecution and subsequent genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and others. The Holocaust teaches us that humanity is capable, what humanity is capable of at its worst. But the survivors teach us that we are capable, what we are capable of at our best, and the refusal to be extinguished, and the choice to rebuild, and the hope to live. As the late Anne Frank wrote in her diary on the 7th of May 1944, what is done cannot be undone, but at least one can prevent it from happening again. The theme of Holocaust Memorial Day this year is Bridging Generations, which encourages the next generations to listen, to learn, and carry forward the lessons from the Holocaust. And we therefore need to encourage our youth to learn about the Holocaust and spread the message. I was reading a report only yesterday which was saying that some schools are no longer taking part in the Holocaust commemoration. I am so glad that at this year's event we have young children as part of the choir from Norbury Junior School. Can I have a round of applause for them again, please? And next year I'll make sure that much older children come and take part. Thanks to Laura Marks, Honorary Vice President of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, I had the opportunity to be one of the 12 faith leaders to visit Auschwitz in April last year with the March of the Living charity. Auschwitz has a particular silence, not peaceful, but watchful. It can feel as if the ground itself is holding memory. Even when other visitors are around, there's a sense that sound doesn't belong there. Often the impact doesn't fully arrive until later. I notice it in unexpected moments, ordinary days, suddenly feeling fragile, laughter feeling slightly out of place, or an awareness of how easily humanity can break. Auschwitz doesn't shout after you leave, it just follows quietly. My visit has changed the way I look at history, not as something distant, but as something made by ordinary people and suffered by ordinary people. It has deepened my sense of responsibility to remember, to notice dehumanization when it begins, and to resist indifference. Auschwitz didn't feel like a place I visited. It felt like something I walked into and never fully left. The silence there was heavy, not empty. Every step felt watched by absence, by lives reduced to objects and numbers. What stayed with me wasn't shock, but a quiet weight, the realization of how ordinary the setting was for something so unimaginable. Since then, history feels closer, more fragile, and I carry a responsibility to remember not just what happened, but how easily humanity can be stripped away when people stop seeing one another as human. I will now let you watch a small presentation of my trip to Auschwitz, put together by our Interfaith Secretary, David Cryer. Thank you, David.
We can move on and come back to this a little bit later. So I'd like to now call upon one of the other major sponsors, so to speak, of this evening. As well as Harrow Interfaith, we also today have the support of an interesting organisation called the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. They, along with Harrow Council and Harrow Interfaith, have had much to do with putting on this evening's events. The Trust is represented here tonight by Brian Markison, who I'd like to now call upon to say a few words. Here's Brian.
Thank you very much. Steve and I are very, very old friends. We go back almost 60 odd years together as fellow students. But anyway, following from Gapalji, I too was there on March the 5th last year. It was my 12th March. It's a pretty harrowing experience. Birkenau is the most horrible place. The silence is almost deafening. You hear no birds singing, and the sheer scale of the place, which hopefully you will see on the film very, very soon. I still have nightmares about the place. But anyway, I'm honoured to be here this evening as a trustee of the HMDT and to join the Harrow Holocaust ceremony. I think what Harrow Interfaith puts on is extraordinary, it is special, it is superb. And I'm very, very grateful to Harrow Interfaith for everything that you do. The 12 candles lit behind me, a special, moving, each candle lit means something. And the candle lighters from every faith, very special. I cannot thank you enough. But we're here today because a remembrance matters, and it's something we must do together. Coming together in this place and at this time is an act of a commitment to remember the 6 million Jewish men, women, and over 1 million children murdered in the Holocaust, and the millions more murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators.
Can we put it on now?
And it's also a commitment to honour the victims and survivors of where persecution led in Cambodia. Sokal, your talk was amazing and so powerful. It got me right here, and your fortitude and courage and strength, I think, is a personal tribute from me to you. And I just mentioned the other terrible genocides, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and other places. But most of all, I thank you all who have come here this evening to share the importance of this act of a remembrance. And other speakers before me have spoken about the theme we chose for this year, bridging generations. And we did have the children here from the choir, but I hope that there are many more children at home watching on YouTube, because it's important that they hear the testimony by survivors, because they then become witnesses themselves, and then they can pass it on to the next generation. And then they can teach it on to their children and future generations. So what each and every one of us this evening can do, and I would say must do, is to ensure that we never forget where horror and barbarism can lead. We must never lessen in our resolve to prevent it from ever happening again. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Brian. Time now for some final reflections. First from Rabbi Shia Green from Northwood and Ruislip United Synagogue, and then from Bobby Riesel, who chairs the organising committee for the Harrow Holocaust Memorial Day. Rabbi.
Thank you to Gopal, Bobby, and all the organisers for the invitation to speak this evening. We're gathered here to mark the 81st anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. It's a moment to remember, to pause, to reflect. We remember the 6 million Jews whose lives were stolen, their futures, their hopes, their dreams, everything that might have been. And we also gather with an awareness that the Holocaust does not stand alone in history. That human cruelty did not begin there, and tragically, it did not end there either. There are sadly other atrocities we must not turn away from, past and present. Tonight, I want to share with you the story of one survivor, a man who passed away just last year. His name was Ivor Wieder. Ivor was only 12 years old when the Nazis arrived in his small village in Maramureş, Transylvania in 1944. He and his family were rounded up, forced into stables, and eventually packed into cattle cars bound for Auschwitz. Within hours of arriving, his mother and his younger sister were gassed. Ivor was just a child, and yet he was selected for forced labor. He was stripped, shaved, tattooed with the number A3388, a number that replaced his name and tried to replace his humanity. From Auschwitz, Ivor was sent through a chain of camps, eventually reaching Bergen-Belsen. Prisoners were transported in open carts in freezing cold. Many did not survive the journey. Ivor did, by lying beneath the bodies of the dead. In the camps, he endured hunger, disease, and relentless brutality. He witnessed horrors that no human being should ever see. He saw people lose all hope. Some ended their lives by throwing themselves against the electric fences, unable to endure another moment of that hell on earth. Years later, Ivor's grandson, Yoni, who today serves as the chief rabbi of Ireland, once asked his grandfather a simple question. Why didn't you give up? Why didn't you do what others did? Ivor would just shake his head and say quietly that he didn't know. People asked him similarly, what kept you going? Was it faith? Was it hope? Was it the need to survive in order to bear witness? But his answer never changed. He didn't know. There were no grand gestures, no heroic explanation, no carefully constructed meaning. He just kept on going. And to Ivor, that was the most honest answer of all. Life itself was reason enough. We have all heard the words, never again, a phrase, a slogan, a cry. But the real question is, how do we move those words off the page and into our lives? Perhaps the answer lies in Ivor's quiet strength. For him, the sanctity of life came before everything else. Not achievement, not success, not recognition, just life. The simple, profound truth that every human being has value simply because they exist. And this is how never again truly becomes not just a slogan, but a way of living, a way of seeing, a way of treating another. May Ivor's memory be a blessing, and may it be a guiding light for us all. And as we remember the past and as we look forward, striving together for a future shaped by dignity, compassion, peace, and hope. Thank you.
Before Bobby, we've located Gopal's film. So hold on then. If you recall, Gopal was going to show us a presentation about the visit to Auschwitz, the March of the Living. No sound on it. It's not going to work. I'll forget it. Sorry about this, but it's not going to happen. So, Bobby, you're back on.
I'm so sorry you have to put up with me instead of Gopal's film. But really, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We've had some very awe-inspiring speakers tonight. Joan, you spoke beautifully about your family, and it must be quite cathartic to be able to tell the story. And Sotpal, what a story. As Brian said, we all felt for you. So thank you both so much for coming. And to our choirs, to our Mosaic choir, thank you. To our children's choir from Norbury School. To my committee, not going to mention them all, but I do want to mention our presenter, Steve Levinson. Where are you, Steve? Thank you, Steve. And to our sponsors, Harrow Council and Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. Thank you. Thank you to everybody, and to all of you for listening to us tonight and being here.
We end now with the moving prayer for peace sung by David Phelps. For many years, David, on behalf of his group, More Than Just a Choir, has taken part in this event. He's here now to sing Oseh Shalom. David.
Oseh Shalom Nimrama Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kulam Imeru Amen. Oseh Shalom Nimrama Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yamaru Imru Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kulam. Oseh Shalom Bimromav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kulam Imaru Amen.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you to all our guests and contributors tonight. Apologies for the technical glitches, but it will be all right on the night. And it remains just for me to let you know that on your way out of the building, you will encounter collectors from our local homelessness charity, Firm Foundation. So watch out for those people and please give generously. And it just remains for me to wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you very much for coming.